You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. And congratulations on last weekend's taking part in different ways in the massive demonstrations to protest deportation. Trump backed down on some of those deportations, certain farm workers and hospitality workers, because their employers complained bitterly that they simply could not function without this labor. Then he reversed himself yet again and again. But direct and indirect congratulations go to you for that support. Although the 4 shootings and 2 murders in Minneapolis, the murders of Democratic Party leaders with a hit list of 70 other people, including abortion providers, was an out-and-out set of assassinations. They now have caught the shooter, but the beat goes on. How did we get here? People ask. It's not difficult to answer. Step by step we got here, gratuitous cruelty by gratuitous cruelty, and acid rhetoric by ignorant clamor. We have been trained by our culture to find violence exciting, thrilling, even erotic. I wrote a whole book on this once called The Demon Lover. It's about the myriad ways in which we're conditioned, seasoned, welcomed into violence. And that brings us, fittingly, tragically, to the subject of pornography. Yeah, it's not laughable, it's not light, it's not dismissible either. My guest today is an old comrade in arms, Dr. Gail Dines, who has been researching and writing about the porn industry and sexual violence for more than 30 years. Her book, Pornland, How Porn Has Hijacked Our Sexuality, has been translated into 4 languages. She is a professor emerita of sociology and women's studies at Wheelock College in Boston, and she's the founder and president of the nonprofit organization Culture Reframed, which is dedicated to building resilience and resistance in youth to hypersexualized media and porn, and which works on solving the public health crisis of the digital age. She's one of the leading anti-pornography scholars in the world, and she appears regularly on media from ABC and MSNBC and CNN to BBC and NPR. She's also appeared her writing in the New York Times, Time, Newsweek, the Washington Post, the Guardian, and her TED Talk has been viewed 500,000 times. Her work is the focus of a film by the Media Education Foundation called Pornland, the documentary, and she's the recipient of the Myers Center Award for the study of human rights in North America. I'll be talking with Dr. Gail Dines in just a moment, after this next brief message. Subscribe to this program on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. Follow us on Twitter at WMC Live, like our Facebook page at facebook.com/WMC Live, and visit us at WMCLive.com for more information about our show and our guests.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Gail, Dr. Gail Dines. Wonderful Gail Dines, my old friend and colleague, and the most extraordinary feminist corrective to an expert on violent pornography and how it's used against women and girls and children, I might add as well. Welcome back.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Anything for you, Robin.
Oh, well, I'm very grateful that you're here. And I know that a lot of things have happened in terms since the last time you were on this program, or since we were last together at the Carter Center, in fact, about
Hmm.
conference on violence against women and pornography and prostitution and how they all interlink. Um, but I know a lot has happened since then. I know Ashley Judd has been working with you, and I know
Hmm.
that you've expanded into the effect of this on adolescent boys. So I think I am going to just be the student here and let you loose and have you bring us up to date on.
Okay. So, well, first of all, in a way, there's nothing new since 2000, in that when pornography hit the internet, really in 2000, what you saw was just astounding. From, kind of softcore to hardcore. Uh, you saw the absolute eradication of any so-called softcore porn, which is not saying that's okay either, because that was about sexual exploitation of women. But what you saw was most of the pornography that was uploaded and that you could get access to was actually really hardcore. So what shifted was that hardcore violent pornography became mainstream pornography.
I remember the Hustler cover of the woman's body being head first being shoved into a meat grinder, her naked body, and meat coming out the other side,
Hmm.
and how
Hmm.
absolutely appalled all women were about that. Go on.
Oh, totally. I think if any image sticks in my mind, and believe me, I've seen hundreds of thousands of images since then, I think it's that one.
Yeah,
I think it's so perfect because the industry was saying what it does to women. It puts them in a meat grinder and basically, spews them out.
that's right.
So yeah, it's a really iconic image that. So what happened was, in 2000, then the pornography exploded. And pornography didn't the internet didn't just drive pornography. We have to realize that the pornography drove the internet. A lot of the R&D money that was given in, like how to develop payment systems and pop-ups and pop-downs and all of these, that was developed by the porn industry.
Mm,
They were really behind the development because porn users are early adopters of any new um, sort of
technology.
technology. Yes.
Yeah.
So you had that, and I mean, it was just around 2000, it was just full of porn. And then what happened was in 2007, Fabian Thyman, who was an IT guy from Germany, he started was called MindGeek, which was basically the free porn site, specifically Pornhub, which really changed the industry. And how it changed it was it went out and pirated the pornography, put it up for free. Now, there was, of course, a sort of side of Pornhub you could pay for that was considered more technologically sophisticated, but most users really used the free
Hmm.
Pornhub. And then other tube sites came up, and you just saw the whole industry shift. And what you saw was that in that time for women, is that they lost a lot of money from this because they only got paid once
Ah,
for the actual scene, and then it was pirated and everywhere. So
forever.
women in the porn industry were forced to go into stripping, prostitution, the whole
Mhm.
ecosystem of the sexual exploitation industries. Also, what we have to focus on is the degree to which women were forced to do body punishing, cruel acts that, we know that the average woman only lasts about 3 months in pornography, given what happens to her body. We also know that she comes out with rampant PTSD because the violence is so awful. And I'll give you an example of a autobiography I read of a woman who was on a photo shoot, and there was two women and one man. And she said at one point, right, her anus is bleeding.
Mm.
So she's sitting on a bucket, bleeding from her anus. And the second woman is having a first trimester miscarriage, and she's sitting on a bucket, bleeding
Oh
into
my
it.
God.
And then they carried on with these women, right? They carried on. And this is the kind of violence they get, chlamydia of the eye, gonorrhea of the throat, things you never hear about. So what that sort of women's lives became just unbearable, the women in the pornography, because we have to always keep remembering that this is not fantasy, this is reality for those women. And it's also reality for the user, because that's real ejaculate that's coming out of his penis, right? That's
Yes.
not fantasy ejaculate. And so with the pro-porn people always like to talk about fantasy, which is absolutely ridiculous for both the
Of course.
creators and both the consumers. Also, what's gone on over the years is that the pornography industry has become the wallpaper of young people, especially young boys' lives. And when you grow up with your first sexual experience being catapulted into a world of cruelty that is unimaginable unless you see it. I mean, I can give you the words, but until you see it. And I remember Andrea Dworkin once said something really interesting. She said it never occurred to her that she had to write a book on pornography or make a case against it because she had the pictures, and all we had to do was look at the pictures and the story told itself.
Right.
It turned out, sadly, that's not true, because the sort of pornography industry came in with a counter narrative, as did the third wave pseudo feminism, that women were empowered and had agency.
Yeah, and that this was in fact an articulation of their agency, because they were so powerful that they could be in pornography. I mean, I've never been able to follow that one.
Well, because it's not true.
Yeah.
That's right. It doesn't make any sense because, you haven't got women with medical degrees
Oh,
and
no.
law degrees signing up to do pornography. You've got the poorest, most oppressed women. Women of color are absolutely disproportionately in pornography. Poor white women, refugee women running away from wars or climate disaster. But women who are desperate end up and it's not a choice, because when all choices are closed to you, which is the reality for most of the women in porn, then going into porn is not a choice. It's this act of desperation in order to put food on the table for your kids, which, if I was completely poor and had no food for my kids, I would have done that. Who wouldn't?
Yeah.
If that's what you need to do. So we need to think about them. We need to think about also the boys and the fact that they are catapulted, as I said, into this world at the average age of starting porn, depending on which study you look at, is between 9 and 11.
Oh,
And they put something like, butts or boobs into pornography, into Google, and they think they're going to come up with, if they're lucky, a pair of breasts, and if they're really lucky, a naked woman. What they are catapulted into is this world, which I'm sure they can't make sense of. But the problem is they're aroused. Right? So think of the toxic stew in that boy's body of arousal, shame, fear, self-disgust, all of those. And yet during that thing, he's masturbating to it, which tells him this is who he is. And often on porn sites, when you go in on some of the videos and stuff, they'll say things like, we know what you want, we know who you are. So they're really grooming the boys into thinking of themselves as porn users. This is who you are. We know you before you know yourself.
it's
And this is
beyond even propaganda. It's conditioning.
totally, totally, it's absolute grooming as well, for the boys. Now, pornography in the last 2 decades has laid waste to a generation of boys.
Mm,
And when you lay waste to a generation of boys, you lay waste to a generation of girls.
yeah.
Because what you're seeing now is levels of sexual violence and abuse against women and children that we've never seen before. So let me give you some examples. One study interviewed incoming college first year students,
Hmm.
women, and asked them about their last sexual experience, not over their lifetime, but their last one. And 1 in 3 said they'd been strangled. 1 in 3.
Ah,
So, where did strangulation come from? It comes straight from pornography.
yeah, of
It's not
course.
like men caught a virus suddenly that they wanted to
No.
strangle women. I mean, this was clear. We also know from research that the earlier boys get to porn, the more they watch, the more likely they are to carry out the acts of porn on anyone who's around. That's brothers, sisters, cousins, schoolmates, anyone. And we work a lot at Culture Reframed with the medical profession, and we have developed programs and materials, because amazingly, in the actual initial questionnaire, when a girl has been brought into what's often a CAC, a child advocacy centre, because of sexual abuse, they never ask the question about pornography.
Huh.
And I gave a talk about 8 years ago to lots of these child advocacy centres, and they started flooding Culture Reframed with requests for us to build programs, educate them, because suddenly they realised that what they were seeing was linked to pornography. And I'll tell you what they were seeing. They were seeing much more violent acts against girls. They were seeing girls were younger. They also found that the perpetrators, who at one point you would assume themselves had been sexually abused, were no longer, you couldn't hold that true anymore. A lot of them had seen pornography and had never been sexually, or let's call seeing pornography a form of sexual abuse, which in a way it is at a young age. But they themselves had not been actually physically sexually abused. And then they found that girls were being anally raped in ways they never had before, that they were being strangled. And then the interesting thing is that, first of all, the age of the perpetrator was around 13 to 15 boy, and the age of the victim, the girl, usually was between 4 and 7. So it's
Oh
right,
my
yeah, so it's gone
God.
right down. And the boys are taping the rape on their phones. They're actually filming it
Oh,
and putting it up across schools, their friends. Now, this is so interesting because porn has become so normalized that
yeah.
they don't actually get that they're documenting an illegal
A
act.
crime, yes,
Yes,
precisely.
they don't get that. They don't get that.
Oh,
So we have seen that explode. And what when we work with there's about 900 odd child advocacy centres. I mean, it's like in the room there you can it's palpable when they realise they've missed this critical change in young people's lives, that they've absolutely missed it. And if you go a bit older, I recently did a podcast with this wonderful woman from England, who's got 168,000 followers on YouTube, and she's extremely anti-pornography, feminist. She's in her early 20s, and I mean, I think it's had well over 100,000 views in the past few weeks and thousands of comments. And what you see is so many young women saying, I cannot stand this anymore. I cannot stand these men. I cannot stand
oh,
dating. The violence, what they expect of us is unbearable. And the comments are the most interesting because it's young women who follow her and they've got a platform to talk about their lives.
mhm.
And, what's happened to young people, I think, is that really they have been left alone to navigate this new world. I mean, often when I lecture in high schools or colleges, I'll say to them, has everyone helped you navigate this whole new world? And
Yeah,
the usual response is no, and we're drowning. We're
yeah,
drowning.
yeah.
And it's interesting because when I'm finished, I'll have a row of young women lining up crying and a row of men on the other side. And the young women are telling me about, and now I understand why I've been raped 3 times. Now I
Mm.
understand why and it's not really boyfriend anymore, it's more hookup, has done this to me.
Yeah.
And then interestingly, I want to say, the young men say, help me. I'm addicted. I don't know what to do. Help me. They're begging for help. And and it's very interesting. I go into colleges, and the first few rows are usually the frat boys and the athletes. And they sit there, you can feel the hostility
Mm.
brewing towards me.
Oh,
And I can see what they're thinking. What the fuck does this middle-aged woman, know about my life and pornography? And then within 10 minutes, if they could reach out and touch me, they would. You
wow.
see their shoulders relax, you see their whole body shift. It's just amazing to watch. And of course, young women crying in the audience. And and what's interesting with the men here is that they have never looked at porn without an erection. This is the first time they're in a college campus
Oh,
and they are looking. I don't show porn movies, obviously. I just show a few stills and read some of the comments from the porn sites. And their frontal lobes are online because when men and boys are masturbating to pornography, they're not in any position to start doing a sophisticated deconstruction of the images that they're masturbating to.
no, of course
Their
not.
frontal lobes are gone, and they're just interested in ejaculation.
Yeah.
So what these men are looking at for the first time is the pornography that they have masturbated to.
Uh-huh.
And you know what? They're disgusted with themselves.
Oh,
They can't believe they found this arousing. And I often say to them as I'm lecturing, do you want to look in the mirror and think to yourself, you are a man who gets off on violence against women. And the good news is a lot of them don't.
Of
Now,
course.
we do have a section of men who we need to dump on a desert island and let them get up, leave them alone because they're not going to change. But increasingly, I am seeing young men also be getting in touch with what it means to be brought up with pornography.
Mm.
And they don't like that. They don't like that part of themselves.
Well, that's very
But
hopeful.
it is, but not enough of them are standing up. I need to say that clearly,
Yeah. Yeah.
although increasingly men are. But young women are starting to stand up. And I think what really did the anti-porn movement a terrible disservice was all this ridiculous, as I said, third wave stuff. And remember, these women who wrote these texts were academics.
Yes, I
They
know.
were far, far away from having to be in the sex industry. And I remember once debating, and often the really stupid questions in the audience would come from, I think, you had to have a PhD to be that dumb to ask that question
Yeah.
because you're so far removed from real life.
Yeah.
I remember one woman arguing with me, and she was a professor there and this is very common that the professors argue that, prostitution, pornography is empowering. So I said to her, look, I assume
Would she
you
like it if her 8-year-old daughter said, "Oh, I want a hook when I want to be a hook."
well, that's not in the plan. She's not even of
Yeah.
course it's never going to happen. So
Right.
I say to you must have all these debts that you did and you spent many years doing your job, getting a PhD. If it's so great, why weren't you out at 12 years old earning money through prostitution? Why did you
Mhm.
bother to get a PhD and build all these debts up if this is
Precise.
empowerment?
What
You know,
did she say?
well, there's nothing they can say, is there? What can
Yeah.
they say?
Yeah.
I mean, I never used to ask my students, in
Yeah.
college, I was teaching them about hookup, and, they didn't even have an orgasm. They didn't expect one. And I said, you're doing this and you're not even getting the most basic thing out of it, an orgasm. And then what was interesting when we dug deeper, because I had a, 14-week course is their pleasure was kind of by proxy, that if they turned him on, then they felt pleasure. It was
That's right.
all about him.
Yeah.
And you understand this because when women are so disempowered, I mean, men don't listen to women. If we ask them to take the trash out or we've got political views or whatever, they don't listen to us. But think about this, you're a young woman and you're either invisible or fuckable, right? Those are your
Yeah.
two choices.
That's right.
Right. So your fuckability is what you see as your power.
Hmm.
So men who don't look at you, suddenly, if they hone in on you for a hookup, you suddenly become, by the way, the most interesting person who ever existed. They give you all their attention because basically they want the hookup. Then the women sort of feel, and the word here would be empowered, right? In that moment, because they're being listened to and seen. And then, of course, when the hookup's over, they're disregarded and he's off to the next hookup. So
Yeah.
she wants to be again seen.
Yeah.
And so it starts all over again for her. So I think what we're looking at here is arousal by proxy or pleasure by proxy, because, we've built a Culture Reframed, a sex ed program for teachers, which has the only one I think in the world that is built on a porn critical framework. So
Wow.
we don't show porn in it because it's for high schools, but we discuss it. And we had consultants from all over the world make this. It's free. You can go on culturereframe.org. It's got PowerPoints, lesson plans. It's an entire course for
Yes, you should
teachers
talk
to
about
take.
a culture reframed, Gail, because I mean, I don't remember how old it is now, but it's
10 years anniversary this year.
my God. Well, congratulations.
Thank
When
you.
you started this, it was unheard of. I mean, it just was I mean, you could about to be crazy. And you have built it into a major force against pornography, prostitution, violence against women, and all those interrelated subjects, because the one leads to the other. And I applaud you for that. That's it.
Thank you.
So,
Well,
but
I've got great people. I have to say that our team is fantastic, absolutely fantastic. I couldn't wish for a better researcher, a better director of programs, director of operations. We have a grant writer, and then what we do for we have
yes,
4
say what
programs.
you do. Say what
Yeah,
you
so what we do is, as well as lecturing, and we get to places where other groups can't get to because we're credentialed. So, for example, I did one of the keynotes at the American Academy of Pediatrics, the annual conference with thousands and
Hmm.
thousands of pediatricians. And all I remember when I got that invite was, God, things must be bad if they're asking me to speak, so, and then I've spoken to, the annual conference of family court lawyers. We've been to the CDC before Trump was, we won't even get into that, was
Yeah.
president.
Yeah.
So we get to very high places and we work internationally in Brazil, in Kenya, in Sweden, Norway, Iceland, the UK. We're all over. And
This is
I
wonderful.
think the reason for this is because if you're going to talk about pornography, you better make sure that you're credentialed and that you're based on academic research, peer-reviewed
That's
research.
correct. That's right.
Because you see, the third wave neoliberal feminism that is pro-porn grew out of the humanities, like history and philosophy, where you don't need empirical research.
Yeah.
So you can just write anything you want. If she's empowered, well, you don't have to prove it. You don't have to cite some research.
Right.
You
Right.
just in
Right.
your head, basically. So what we do is we have a revolving door of the top level consultants in the field. So the first programs were built around 2016 to 2018 were program for parents of tweens and program for parents of teens to how to talk to your kids about pornography. And at the end, we even had conversation scripts of how to start a conversation. And if it went
Wow.
bad, the conversation, which it probably would, we had how you can bring it back. And we always say one thing: when you're talking to your kids about pornography, you have 110-minute conversations, not a 100-minute conversation. Because
Uh-huh.
that kid would rather be anywhere in the world than talking to you about pornography. So we explain how for boys, for example, the best place to talk about it is in a car because you're not looking face to face.
Ah,
We give all sorts of tips
brilliant.
how to do that. I know with my son, he used to enjoy baking, so I would make sure as I was away at the other end of the kitchen when we're baking, and and my son's first language was feminism, so it was pretty easy talking about
Yeah.
that. So we built those programs. Then what happened was we got an email from sex educators in schools in England, and what happened is, in the English government made it mandatory to teach sex ed
Mm.
from K through all the grades. And what was happening, because they were not building any curriculum, was private companies were coming in.
Oh,
And
oh,
their sex ed was curriculum was saying things like how to use porn responsibly.
oh my God.
Yes. And that's like saying how to teach a kid to drink and drive, anyone to drink and drive responsibly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they had said it, there's nothing out there. It's awful. And another one said, I remember reading, because I went through all the syllabus, all the curriculum, was things like porn's like chocolate. Some of it's nice, but don't do too much.
Oh, for
Of
God's
course.
sake.
So what we did
Oh, for God's
was, it was obvious we had to come in and counter that. So we brought in sex educators, the very top drawer from who had been teaching in their classrooms about pornography. And that program took a year and a half to build, and it is an entire program because most sex educators, most teachers who teach sex education often teach either biology or math or anything, and they're told like 3 weeks before you're teaching the sex ed course. And because
Uh-huh.
very few are actually trained in it. So we basically, it's an entire training program, and we even give you the PowerPoints that you can show in class, the discussion points, the ways to do it. And every lesson starts with, what you need, what the students need, pen, paper, this and that, the questions you're going to ask, how you're going to ask them. So we did the entire work. And by the way, everything we do at Culture Reframed, every program we have is free. We made a decision that people should have access to this irrespective of income, which means, of
Wow.
course, put an incredibly heavy burden on us to fundraise because, we don't make money from any of our products.
Yeah.
So we have to fundraise. And let me tell you, fundraising to do this kind of work is not easy.
Oh,
It
of
is
course not.
very, there's money, thank goodness, in the anti-trafficking world. But the trouble with us with fundraising is when we go out there, most people don't know there's a problem. We have to start at the very basics of
Yeah.
what the problem
Yeah.
is
I
because
see.
they've never seen porn, a lot of them, or if they have and they're
Of
users, they
course.
don't want to engage with us anyway. I mean, there was a billionaire who came to us, quite well known, so I won't mention his name, and etc. And he would give us money if we agreed to certain things, and we wouldn't
Mm.
because I think he was probably maybe a porn user, I don't know, but he wanted us to only deal in certain types of porn, and we wouldn't. We're not selling ourselves out for that.
Yeah,
There's
no,
not
of
enough
course
money
not.
on earth for us to sell ourselves out.
No.
So this is what we've been doing. So now the last program that just went up, I shouldn't say final because we're doing more, was for all pediatricians, frontline nurses, child advocacy centres, forensic interviewers, for
Wow.
kids who've been sexually abused. And we've done an entire program for how to talk to kids about pornography, how to do forensic interviewing about pornography, how to deal with the police about it. And that was built by 25 consultants that we had meetings with regularly, all of whom are the frontline workers for child
Mm,
sexual abuse.
mm.
And
Brilliant. Just
so we
brilliant.
have foundations who we got a big grant from a foundation to do that, and it's the only thing out there that works with frontline, and we wrote it also for the UK for paediatricians. That anyone who's involved with dealing with children who've been sexually abused can use it.
And an average parent, let's say, who doesn't know, who suspects that her little boy is on the computer at strange hours and maybe delving into this, she can go online and find you
Well,
and
they would go to the parents program. That was
uh-huh.
especially geared. That's the other program we have and there's one for parents of teens and one for parents of tweens. And as I said, we give conversation scripts. We
Wow.
introduce them to the world of pornography. We even have red flags, like for example, if your kid starts closing the door a lot more when they're on the computer, if they're not sleeping well, is a big sign that they're on the computer at night on porn.
Hmm.
If they suddenly start using precocious language that you've never heard before,
Hmm.
and if suddenly they've got money they didn't have before, because that means they're being groomed online,
Ah,
being sent money. So that's just four of many, many red flags that we tell them to look for. So we know, look, the parenting is the most humble experience you'll ever have in your life. Now you expect parents to be experts in pornography. I mean, this is too much.
mm,
It's too much to ask. And let's be honest, it's not just parents, mainly the mothers who are doing this, who are
mm.
working outside, inside and outside the home, often, two jobs
Yeah, of course.
given the economy. And now you expect this poor woman to go and start reading, research articles on pornography. So what we did is we made it digestible in a way that there's about it, and to get through the whole thing, you can do 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days, or 5 weeks to get through those programs. It's up to
That's
you. It goes at
amazing.
your
It's just
pace.
incredibly useful, Gail. I mean, and
Yeah, I mean, this is
it's
what we wanted to
accessible,
do.
it's basic, it's helpful. It helps people.
And we have hundreds of thousands of downloads of these programs
Mm.
altogether. And we actually don't know how many, because what happens, for example, for our sex ed one, is that one school will download it, but it'll be taught across classes in that school.
Ah,
So there'll be teachers using it. The program for the child advocacy centres will be downloaded by one centre, but it will then be spread across the entire state.
I see. And you
Cetera.
can
So
want me to
we really
follow it.
can't. Yeah,
Right.
I mean, and we have touched. So in our 10 years, I cannot begin to imagine how many hundreds of thousands of parents, professionals, experts, activists, and you know what we do? We do this in a way, and of course it's feminist based. There's no question, but we do it in a way that is they can listen to it,
Of
because
course.
otherwise it's useless. It's
No,
useless.
absolutely. And it's also to do it in a way that is excluding boys is to lose part of the message. I mean, a very central part
Totally,
of the message.
totally. And,
So
and
you
you know
can't.
what? Sorry, I'm sorry, Robin. Go
No, no,
ahead.
no. So that's a closed road.
Well,
This is amazing.
you know what we always say in our lectures? We say, feminists are accused of being man haters. Let me tell you, we are men's best friends. We are the only group that believe in their humanity, that believe that they're born with all the capacity for empathy, love, and connection that
Mm,
girls are.
right.
If you want to see man haters, go to pornography, because they say men are nothing more than life support systems for erect penises. That's all they are, devoid of anything human. Listen, if we as feminists really thought that men were born Johns and serial rapists and murderers and etc., we wouldn't be doing this work.
Much, much easier to commit androcide than
Yes.
than go through all that we're going through. So and have, I might add, for generations, because this is a multi-generation struggle. I mean, it goes on and on and on.
Absolutely. And it's getting worse. So what I would argue is there's been a dereliction of duty on the part of adults in letting kids having to basically drown in this culture, this completely pornified, misogynist, cruel culture. And Neil Postman, the famous media critic, once said that when you lived in a print-based culture, we had some immunization to the seduction of eloquence of the printed word. We have no such immunization to the seduction of eloquence of the image.
No.
And we have to teach digital literacy and image-based literacy. And I know that because when I was writing Pornland, which by the way was really had an incredible impact. I did not realize the impact that Pornland would have. It's now in
That
6
book
languages.
is dynamite.
Well, it's from 2010, but most of it's as relevant today. It's been translated into 5 languages. So, I mean, and writing that book and doing that book and really and it was my life's work, that book. You understand, it's been percolating for 30 years. So, I mean, it was doing that book and thinking about it on a level that I hadn't thought about. I had thought about it, but not put it all together. That was also major in shifting the discourse around it. And also, it was the first anti-porn book to come out, apart from Bob Jensen's, in 10 years. All the others coming out of academia were pro-porn.
Right.
And Robin, you'll really be pained by this, but you know where the worst review was?
Oh God.
I hate to tell you this.
Don't tell me.
Miss Magazine online.
Really?
Yeah.
Because they were, quote, sex positive. Is that
Yeah, it
the
was by
word?
a third waver Shira Tarrant, who's
I
a
see.
professor, who
Ah,
interviewed me 3 times on that. And it was just, I mean, it was really negative. And then Ms. did give me the right to respond, just me rather than in an interview, because particularly on one of the chapters, I really take apart racism in pornography. I talk about the way in which women of color and all the horrible tropes about them and true women of men are basically played out and weaponized in pornography. The men are out to rape white women, the black women are all whores who live in the hood.
right,
So I
right.
really took it upon to say that what happens in pornography is that all these awful tropes about women and race are blasted onto the woman of
Foregrounded. Yeah.
body,
Yeah.
and they make porn even more sexy
Yeah.
because she's debased doubly, once for her race and once for her
Of
gender, and
course.
the intersection of both. So anyway, so then I talk about that. What does this third wave feminist write? She writes that, to counter that interview I did with her, she writes that she spoke to some performers in the porn industry, women of color, who said they're empowered. That was her argument against it.
Yeah, well, this is not sufficient. I mean, I'm sure it gave total indigestion, if not much more, cramps to members of the staff. But
Yeah,
the
no, because Ms. is great. I publish a lot in Ms. And they are really, they're very open to this argument. It was just that particular thing in Pornland, which was
right.
very upsetting, I have to say. But
Well, it's been made difficult to speak out against this.
exactly.
I mean, there's a kind of shutdown about porn and not being sex positive. I mean, as if we were all sex negative. I mean, this is insane. And so that there's um, uh, a prescription against speaking up and speaking out.
Totally.
You know,
Totally. And I would say
you fell right into
we
it.
are sex positive, and that's why we're anti-porn.
Well, yes, because
Because we can't bear what they've
exactly.
done to it. We can't bear what they've done to sex.
That's
Porn
right.
is to sex what McDonald's is to food.
Yeah,
The complete monetization of a natural, a normal human need, stolen from you and sold back to you in a way, and monetized back to you in a way that looks nothing like the original thing.
that's right. That's right.
Right. Yet, if I was out there on the speaking circuit talking about McDonald's and fast food industry, nobody would accuse me of anti-eating.
No, 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 they
They
wouldn't.
would understand this was a
Yeah,
position.
but this goes to their identity. This goes to their basic self. And until there was vocal and in some cases brilliant and book writing and articulate and strong women survivors of the sex industry speaking out. Until that, we were spinning in circles as feminists because they kept saying, we don't know. How do we know? And then they began to speak out. So I
Absolutely.
think it is changing, but it's changing very slowly. And not nowhere near fast enough.
You know what, Robin? Much to my sorrow, the anti-porn movement has not got the same survivor-led movement as the anti-trafficking movement.
No,
What
I know.
and you know why partly that is? Because when you're leave trafficking, and there's wonderful people like Vanita Carter who ran these fabulous
Yes,
exiting homes where she, and every time I see Vanita speak, she just makes me cry because she's such a warm,
she
loving,
is. She's wonderful.
wonderful human being, and just basically loved these women better with, as well as doing education with them when they lived together. But there's no such place in the anti-porn movement, and the reason for that, I think, is that survivors feel like they can never leave porn because their images are
It's
never,
still there and still circulating. That's right. Yeah.
yeah, they're
No,
never,
I mean
they're never out of it.
that's something that um, former porn survivors have said many different times that
Hmm.
that although I'm out of it, they would say the images continue, and so
Well, look at the internet now. I
that's
mean,
right. Every time
yeah,
so it just continues and continues, and I continue being raped. I
that's
continue
right.
being beaten
That's
up. I
right.
continue being harnessed. I continue,
And
and
I'm so exposed and vulnerable
yeah, yeah.
because,
Ah,
you don't know if the next door neighbor, your kids, the people in the store, you don't know if they've been seen your imagery. So they live in with constant PTSD and that fear and vulnerability, as of course do women who've been trafficked.
yeah, that's
But
right.
it's just we do not have the same level of infrastructure in the
No, because this lasts for forever. I mean, Gail, you are a force measure. I mean, you are extraordinary to keep going this way and keep going against such adversarial pressure and succeeding. I mean, one by one at the level of transformation of people. This has been extraordinary. I mean, I just
Well, I want to say I stand on the shoulders of women like you, Andrea Dworkin, Catherine McKinnon, all of these women who, when Andrea died, which was, a dread, and I remember you called me, Robin, to tell me. You were
did I
there.
can't
I'll
remember.
never forget that day as long as I live because you were on the other end, and I knew by your voice what you were going to tell me.
Uh,
But I stand on all of your shoulders who created this, and I would, if it hadn't have been for all of you, I would still be looking at pornography thinking, something about this bothers me, but I don't know what it is. You all laid the groundwork, you did the heavy lifting to figure out what it was. And it was brilliant to have not to have to figure that out and write it down. And then it was thanks to that you allowed people like me I didn't, I could jump off of what you'd written and continue to follow the porn industry. And we owe an enormous debt to women like you and you especially.
well, thank you very much, my dear. I don't really see it, but I'm grateful, very grateful to be included, and it's taking all of us, and it will take all of us to change this and to end this and to transform people into really loving, erotic, free human beings who are on the side of eros and not thanatos.
Mm,
I mean,
mm.
and not murder and not pain and pain. So I'm very grateful, and I hope say again the website of Culture Reframed.
Yeah, culturereframed.org. And it's
Okay,
reframed as in reframing a picture with ED on the end. And all our resources and all our programs are free. So I do encourage, people to go and look at our programs.
that's just brilliant. Oh, thank you, and thank you for being with us on Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you so much.
We have to take a short break here, but I'll return directly with some fighting words. The Women's Media Center, founded in 2005 by Jane Fonda, Gloria Steinem, and myself, is a progressive, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization working to make women visible and powerful in media. You can learn more about the WMC at womensmediacenter.com.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Etymology. That's a fighting word. Etymology, or the history of how a particular word came to be, is fascinating and reliable. It's a virtual map of human thinking. You can trace the evolution of a word through different languages, different cultures, different geographies, different histories even. You can follow the train of thought traced by ancient brains and see it reveal itself quite clearly and astonishingly right. It's why I so frequently resort to etymology on this podcast. For example, the words pornography and erotica. Some years ago, Gloria Steinem and I wanted to write a piece for Ms. Magazine on the difference between pornography and erotica. We went round and round, trying to pin down the definitions of each, but only getting further entangled. Then one day, I happened on the etymology of the word pornography, and a bit later on that of erotica. Wow! Pornography has as its root the Greek and Latin words porne and graphos. Porne meant sexual slaves or sexual enslavement. Graphos meant the writing or drawing, the description or depiction of just that, of sexual servitude, sexual slavery. The violence of pornography is inherent and embedded in the etymology itself. So I went on to find the etymology of erotica, which stems, as it turns out, from the word eros. Eros itself had a number of meanings, among them sexual love, physical affection, tenderness, humor, life affirmation. Well, Gloria and I had our definitions, and I rest my case. And that's our show for this week. You can follow me on social media at The Robin Morgan. You can check out my blog at robinmorgan.net, and you can find my new novel, Parallax, and my just-out new book of poems, Harvesting Darkness, wherever books are sold. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Views expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. Executive producer, as well as founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. WMC president and co-executive producer for this program, Julie Burton. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Join us next time on Women's Media Center Live.